So this welcome to the Openstack QA session. This session about the QA work we need to do until expanding our QA efforts. So, James, you want to give a brief overview of what we did?
Okay, so for Precise Cycle, we got up and running with testing of OpenStack front on pretty much on every commit for all of the core components. So that was Noverse, Swift, any core components. Lots of them, including clients as well, against the current point in time for Precise as it was being developed. That was post-commit, not pre-commit, although we did experiment with pre-commits, and that's something we want to talk about today. But that was relatively successful. So we were building a package build process that pulls in, creates turbos based on the last commit, upstream, builds packages. If they build, then they get deployed on hardware and tested.
Is it using the Python setup, the PySDs to build it?
Yes. So we actually support two different types. So not every project was using that. I don't know. Anyway, we can basically create just a table, or you can do SDs. There was one that wasn't, so we just had that as an edge case that we supported. We did that first. So
you install and you run what kind of test?
Okay, so we run the exercise script from DevStack as a smoke, and assuming that passes, we always run temp tests as well.
Well, for the majority of the cycle, we were just running exercise script, so we clone DevStack, drop in our own OpenIC and kick off the exercises. That works pretty well until new tests come in. We need to account for in our deployment, but it's a good way for us to keep on top of that stuff. And then I did a Tempest job and had that running automatically alongside DevStack with reasonable success until they changed a whole bunch of the configuration format for getting the tests up and running. And since then, I've gotten the tests running again, but they're not succeeding as well as they were. So I need to look into that and get it passing a better percentage of it and selecting bits and pieces of templates that we actually want to run. And I'd like to run in the future out of Tempest the stress tests that recently got added. There's a new stress test suite that's in there that was developed against Ubuntu this last cycle, so I'd like to take advantage of that in addition to the main Tempest tests or whatever subset we choose to run.
Did you have a lot of false negatives in testing?
There were a few instances in DevStack where the tests seem to make assumptions that everything's running on the same node, and there's little workarounds we have to do, whether it was configuring the OpenRC in a certain way. But towards the end, the majority of them were pretty stable, floating at these volumes, Yuka, Bundle, one of the newer ones. We're skipping Swift at the moment, but the ones that we were running were pretty darn reliable for shaking out pretty obvious bugs.
Did you catch anything interesting using this?
I think we did.
Yeah,
You can probably talk more about what
Except for sleeping at night and being big confident. Did it help you?
yeah, the majority of the bugs that we reported as a team came from this effort. So I don't know this off the top of my head, but I probably could have prepared that or if you're interested.
Things that you should catch with it is things that require packaging change, code change that requires packaging change that makes everything fail. Until you add that, do you have such?
Oh yeah. So one of the big, it caught a lot more configuration related and deployment related changes upstream than it did bugs, but it did catch all of those. Some of the refactoring of the Keystone authentication stuff into, I kind of prepared for the switch to service credentials and
how many of those changes were properly communicated in advance, and how many of them were just discovered using the test rig?
Well, a lot of the changes we had to make weren't necessarily bugs or problems. It was just development going on upstream and just normal stuff that we were on top of. doing it in preparation for a change that was going to land upstream. So the service credentials one was a big one, if you know what I'm talking about. Instead of services being configured to talk to someone with a min token, now they get a user, a tenant, and a password associated with them. That was a big change right there with the cycle that, I mean, I had the changes in our deployment and our packaging and just waiting to pull the trigger on that
The
branch.
new dependencies front, because we try to have this rule where new dependencies should be announced in the menu list. Then getting everyone.
The ISO 8601, I think, that was an ugly one that stuck in, but
We
I
plan
can't
to
remember.
introduce centralized dependency management, so they would have to change the file somewhere else before they can actually. You could watch with a really small number of files or changes and be informed in advance.
Say that's
Where is that file at?
It hasn't started.
It's not. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
there yet. It's just that we uniform converge dependency within the project. So that you can actually run the whole thing with the same set of dependencies rather than random dependencies for each project. We want to introduce centralized dependency management for the Openstack centralized dependency management rather than each project doing anything else. And that's something that should be done during the some cycles.
That would help. I mean, we could just take a look at that before the test run.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll use that to drive what's installed on the different slaves and the dev spec.
Yeah, the problem, I mean, that's good if it's centralized, it's still going to cause us, it's just the nature of the dependencies, we have to package all that stuff, it doesn't exist yet, but that's good. And there's someone to watch.
I mean, this is the kind of first test that the CI suite does the package still build?
Yeah.
So, we generally pick these things up pretty early. Obviously, we go through tests.
Well, I think it's also interesting that the new dependencies are discussed in advance so that you can weigh in on stuff that's already may make sense.
Well,
And having centralized dependency management will kind of enforce the idea that developers cannot just add dependency when they want, that they need to have some kind of oversight.
And depending how this ends up looking, this could be something that you could watch in Garrett, right? So there will be a change for review that's just about a dependency change, which is a lot better than trying to notice when anybody changes that it requires in any kind of project.
Or you can drive notification on that and like send that. Really helpful.
so
Or email to you.
So moving on, for console, we're going to be doing a lot more testing because we have basically 3 versions of OpenStack to test. So Quantal, Ultimate Quantal, Ultimate Precise, Access Unprecise. So there's a lot more work we need to be done. We also, last cycle we haven't really tested Swift a lot, so we need to be doing more Swift testing. So we have a more integrated, like what people would be deploying. Since we didn't have enough machines for Swifts, I guess.
How many machines do we need to test?
I think we were short one for it was more dependent on the Juju charm that we have being kind of stupid. I wanted to rewrite that to get the requirement down to 2 machines to do a real sort of thing.
Okay.
And I'm halfway through rewriting that now. So that was a work item from last, that got postponed, but once that's done, we should be able to do a functional Swift setup for testing object store, glance backend.
That's cool. Quick question. I'll take too much time, but just for folks who don't know, could you really give a real quick view of what your testing does once it, I mean, how do you define functional, and what is, I mean, besides you build that test and that completes the build, how do you, what test suites, what workflows are you pushing through the environment to do the functional test of various components?
And another thing, is there API validation?
No.
Yeah, no.
So the 2 test suites are DevStack exercise, which does a basic create credentials, upload an image, run it. It just does a very, very light slope of the deployed OpenStack solution. Tempest is much more in depth, and I don't know the details. It runs quite a large.
Are we going to run anything thing like what we did for eucalyptus?
Which was
Being the crap out of
big
the
so
system.
like beta testing.
Yeah, we'll get back.
Can you write that down?
Is it the eucalyptus test suite that was around
Yeah.
before all of this?
Speak on.
Okay, so what I understand is like the testing we are doing is dependent on DevStack script.
No, we're using DevStack.
No, we use the test suite that comes in DevStack just because it was easy to integrate.
So one more question, does DevStack provide you option to deploy Openstack using PGSQL? I guess it depends only on MySQL.
We're not using DevStack to deploy.
No, I got
We're
it.
using the post DevStack functional test that just tests the cloud as a black box server. So if we configured it before running those tests to use Postgres in the backend, we can start from that. So it's a matter of us testing different database backends, which I think will be a work pattern that I committed to at the Openstack.
That's a child feature.
So, and there's also extra stack now, which is basically DevStack test scripts on steroids, which we use as well.
I think his point is interesting because do you plan to test multiple deployment options or just the default MySQL?
Because DevStack doesn't give you option for PGSQL. It precedes MySQL.
No, but they are not using DevStack for deployment, so it's just that whenever they deploy, they can put new configuration files before exhausting whatever test suite they will run.
It's a possibility.
But it adds to the complexity of your matrix as soon as you also consider different configurations, but instead of default. But I guess it depends on how many options you actually want to support.
It's a possibility.
Postgres is in main as well, and
So-
it will be seen as a valid.
Right, so a lot of, I mean, it was picked up in this testing, but became obvious to me at times before this lab was database migrations, was, and always has been a pain point for us at least. So I had a session about it at ODS, and I'd like to, in addition to this kind of smoke testing, do database migration testing with different SQL-like backends, being mostly targeted towards expanding to Postgres. And we can, once I have that up and running, we can do similar configuration testing in this so that we spin up OpenStack with MySQL on the back end and run whatever test suite we're running, and then reconfigure the deployment to talk to Postgres very easily, and then just trigger the same test.
So the upstream unit tests that we were on Jenkins as of yesterday, I think are now tested. Just about getting database migration from MySQL.
On MySQL. Okay. I mean, wasn't it always doing that? Database migrations were part of the DevStack process of bootstrapping a cloud to test.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
And that goes against MySQL. And the problem wasn't necessarily like, it was that the deployments were written against Oneric's MySQL package, which installs MyISM, sort of by default, and then that was switched to InnoDB by default and precise. So switching that by default in the server causes migration to fail. So
yeah, so that was unit tests have been added for that to make sure. So actually, what we do on the Jenkins slate now is we install a MySQL that's configured with MyISAM by default. There's a unit test that makes sure that all of the tables get created as an MVD.
they get created or converted later.
Created, I think.
Okay. I mean, if it goes in before any migrations are run, it switches to InnoDB, then that will match what we were at least shipping in precise and testing. Because the issue was it was created tables that were converted later to InnoDB didn't look the same as if they were. Sorry, tables that were converted to InnoDB didn't look the same as if they were created initially as InnoDB. It's just, I don't know, something database MySQL specific, but I'm going to be doing heavier automated testing of that stuff as well downstream from you. One of the issues was we were reporting against Precise while you guys were still on error, so I'm sure at some point beat the version.
I guess my point is, should you document the configurations that you recommend and that you actually have QA for?
Yes.
And because there are plenty of options that might all use Ubuntu main components, and only a fraction of those combinations that you will test. So at least document that the correct way to, or the recommended way to deploy Openstack would be to the one that you push QA on is using MySQL or something else.
I mean, and there is a reference that we've been using so far that I don't think we've documented, so maybe that'll just be working.
So that was actually agreed during what the
I failed to get PGSQL working with Keystone, and I don't know if it's upstream call, but it's about to open the package. Probably I'm going to find out once I'm back home. It's a long time that I'm waiting.
Yeah, but I think it's a documentation thing because you should still be able to run something else, but you're a bit more on your own.
Right. So
you cannot just test all the combinations.
Okay.
So if we're testing a specific Keystone configuration that we are right now, which is just a default, and when you're using the LDAP package instead, then
The traditional.
your assumption might be that we're testing with each document, but you know what we're actually testing, so you yell at us if it's working for you, if it's working for us.
Yeah, at the very minimum, document the configuration options that you test with it.
I mean, we have them documented elsewhere, like, so there's a deployment script that kicks off that contains the specific configuration bits to each service.
It's mostly the default.
Yeah. The idea was that we would be maintaining different configurations for different tests and having a way to publish that, and for anyone who might want to convert that deployment into Puppet and do it on their own in their lab. That'll change. I mean, that'll happen once we start expanding this to cover more configurations, but we'll do it anyway for the defaults that we're using.
Just generally, anybody who wants to help us test more things that we're not testing upstream, please come and work with us on that. We're happy to do that.
So another thing we're going to be testing is upgrade testing. So basically updating from, well, basically all of this is that we need to care about now. We need to be caring on how to make sure updates don't break anything. So basically precise to console on, also on precise, all the things you have to care about now. Just going to make it fun.
Are we going to have specific supported upgrade paths?
I think
Because this is just potentially going to get worse and worse over the next 2 years as we have 5 different versions of Openstack that we might be.
You only support the current, right, and the backwards. You only support the current and the backwards.
Only support current and backwards. So it'll be.
Once you get
So we'll have people potentially upgrading from Precise SS to any one of the next 4
I would say,
Openstack releases.
I think that's not smart. What, you need to walk through the
Okay.
Isn't that how it's been?
potential, I mean, I think that we model our LTS policy and potentially we allow from precise SX to I on 1404, right? Actually, we have to do that,
Yeah.
but I don't think that, otherwise I would say we do incremental.
Well, this is actually a good point. When we prepare for next LTS, which versions of Openstack will be supported for upgrade? This should be documented.
Still another discussion, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
We'll
testing whatever.
discuss that.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that along.
I have to run. Can I insert one thing that you guys can enact? But I would like to see each of the cloud images of supported releases being uploaded and kind of at least sniffed in a boot. I know that largely they're not going to fail, but it'd be nice to have it to like know that we didn't change something in OpenStack and then booting up 10.04 instances.
That would be
Yeah, and then it would be nice, although it'd be hard to get real data out of it, but I would like to run some benchmarks in the guess to make sure that, to get a set of numbers, basically we're doing nice automated things here. It would be nice if we could get automated KVM benchmarks out of it. I realize they're very hard to get because even like launching an instance, maybe the second instance goes to the same host as the first, and one day and then the next day it doesn't, and then it's all very random. But
It doesn't matter. If
you
run
can nag
enough-
it if you want.
If you run enough of them, eventually there will be blue words.
Yeah, but
All the large numbers.
yeah, but I want to get numbers I can, you know, I don't want it one day to do this good,
Yeah.
and then down.
Yeah.
So we're also going to do a lot of faults and from testing as well, including images. See how many images we can load, how many instances we can load before it breaks.
There's a hard number usually
Yeah.
of that.
Give it we can help get the number up.
But I mean, you can only fit so many virtual machines on a system with 8 gigs of RAM.
Oh, we got a bigger machine.
And the hard limit increases a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe performance testing, or how long does it take for an instance to start, but then how many we can.
Yeah.
I think there's certain things we can do in the lab that we have at the moment. So I'm not saying we should do this on every campaign because I don't think it's appropriate. But say on a weekly or every other week basis, we run a burn test, like Carlos was saying, where we have a hard limit on the number of current instances, but we just keep creating turning that.
That's the stress test in Tempest. I like to run. You're right. I wouldn't want to do that for every commit. That would be like an overnight type deal. It's going to take a pretty long time to run, but it does things like spin up 10 instances, wait an arbitrary amount of time, and kill 3 of them, and then instantaneously spin up another 6, and just real world kind of hammering.
It's like running the dev stack key.
Against, what do you mean?
It's the dev stack key is itself is a stress test.
Oh, the cloud provider?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time talking to cloud providers about their performance.
Well, free QA for that.
Yeah.
What other stuff do we discuss at UDS and
Integration or collaboration with you guys upstream. I don't know when we met here or wherever it was. We had great ideas of making this kind of testing available to the community at large, whether it's posting it somewhere or letting you guys trigger jobs on our setup. I don't think that's going to happen just given the security constraints that we work under. But it's short of doing that and posting back to Garrett pre-commit. How can we make this consumable by you guys? And
Well, so posting to Garrett would be great. We've expanded the voting range for the verified category now. And so we can, whatever account, I don't know if you guys have a service account with Garrett.
We do, yeah.
Okay, yeah. We can,
I've tested most of that integration already.
okay.
But I'll turn it on because I want to talk about it.
Okay. So anyway, that, we can let that account vote ±1, which is now advisory for the verified column. Our Jenkins now votes ±2. So that would be great. If you can leave links in the comments to some place where people can see the test results or error messages or something like that, that would be as well.
yeah, so we publish everything to the main Ubuntu public-facing Jenkins dashboard where that stuff is available.
Yeah.
Does that include logs as well?
Yes.
It does. So I think with that feedback is we need to find a good way of not creating too much channel because obviously our CI environment is testing numerous things, including that packaging still works and stuff like that. And the last thing I want to do is start giving back stuff to Garrett that then creates stuff that people don't trust. Because I don't think that adds minimal value. We're I don't quite know how to do this. I spoke with Dan about this, about industrial smokestack, but I know he reviews results before they get pushed back together. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we would do that initially, just to make
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, but I guess that's where some of the challenge is having the mechanism in place to support that review process.
I think the complexity is for reviewers that will see the -1 from your instance is to determine if it's a packaging issue or something else. If there was a way to quickly categorize when the failure happens,
Yes.
that could help because they don't know generally enough packaging to be able to tell between the different issues. So if there was like several stages and you could determine that it failed at package build.
We do that. I mean, we do the build and then trigger the next job, which is deployment. And once it reaches the state, the next job, which publishes an imaging trace using credentials and that kind of stuff, and then
So
does the exercise.
if the comments can be like
It's separate.
maybe you should report on the failure that happens after packaging. Maybe you could, or at least point to the phase that failed, so that people actually
I wouldn't
understand that.
I wouldn't even consider posting back for failed packaging or deployment because it's hard. It's kind of tough because like database migrations, for instance, will fail during deployment and not during smoke testing.
We don't
Yeah, I don't
want
know.
to train the developers to ignore the feedback from your teams because it happens to be available for them. So if there was a way for them to quickly tell where it failed and where it makes really sense for them, not necessarily not reporting failure when it doesn't affect you. But I remember for Smoothstack, there were a number of false negatives that basically trained every reviewer to ignore your reports, for instance, from Smoothstack. So that's,
I don't want that to happen. I want us to.
so you need to report useful information for developers with logs that make sense for them and not with some accurate TPKG logs that doesn't make sense for those macOS requirements.
Okay, so we need to mention find a good way of categorizing failure. I would like to only push back the ones which are and I would plus zero. I don't know. To say we've tested it, but we've seen something that we don't really know either way.
Yeah, you can
Just comment and say.
Yeah, it's essentially what it is.
And find some way of at least like a motion period where we're doing stuff before we go back together.
Well, you could even comment on the testing column if it's the packaging that fails.
Yeah.
The information that is there, the developers know that their patch might not be bad.
I'm worried about that just because of how often builds fail unrelated to that. Most like for things like we have to refresh a patch we're carrying because it doesn't apply anymore, and then until someone actually logs in and gets that done, it's could have failed 10 builds.
I think it's something we should discuss offline, please. Like out of this mission.
Well, we know we need to do it, and we
Yeah.
need to make sure that the quality stuff going back to carry is good.
Yeah.
And it's possible to rerun the job for a given review. So probably run out. Okay.
Maybe split up our scripts.
Maybe split them all up.
Excuse me?
Sorry?
Maybe split up our scripts
To do what?
that generates packaging and software.
We do. They're separate jars.
So it could just be
Sorry, I just read what was written there. One thing that I would really like is to have charms explicitly for tests. Do not mix a test on the deployment charm. Have a specific test that I can run, I can deploy and run a test in a charm without having to do anything else. Deploy DB migration test, and then there is a test running on DB migration. Okay.
The problem is that the database migration is part of the deployment process, right?
No, I'm giving an example.
Right. I mean, that's the example I put that. So I'd like to be able to test deployment or database migration separate from the deployment deployment.
Yeah.
But the deployment is really heavily dependent on things working in the code that testing. Because when you add relations and things start authenticating with each other in Keystone, or
No, this is just an example. Don't fix on database migration, but think about any other test. Give them their own shards,
so that we can hand that over to someone else.
so that I can do integration tests later on. System library changed, and I want to see if Openstack is effective. Openstack is already deployed.
Yeah, so the gotcha there is that those new charms now require a new machine to run them on. So we have a Jenkins instance that's a Juju client, it's a build system that we trigger the deployment job on. So Juju's running on this same node as Jenkins. Jenkins is the user driving Juju to deploy. It's up all our machines, and then if we want to deploy a test suite in a charm form, it needs to have another machine to be run on.
So we
can't do that parallel testing.
Yeah, so the whole point is, my ideal scenario for that will be that I can run a test, except for prereqs like database migration, anytime I want without having to reinstall the whole shebang. And if you have a charm that depends on the deployment or drives the deployment, then this is not a runtime test. This is a deployment test. Okay, I don't want just deployment test. I want to be able to go and run whenever I want a specific set of tests, with all the due constraints, etc., etc., etc. I want to do something like what we did on UEC. UEC was already deployed. I didn't need to redeploy it if I wanted to run another test.
That's just.
The whole thing is, when we talk about integration, we usually think about dependencies. What package, a dependent package was upgraded, so we want to see if it's integrated. But we also have problems where something else changed, and it doesn't work anymore. It was not a dependency. Still, it doesn't work. And those are the tests I would like to be able to run. I have a dream, as I said earlier on, and my dream is completely crazy and absolutely insane, but I want it.
I don't expect to do that.
Yeah, and no, I'm not going to write it, at least not right now. Just think about it. Okay, yeah.
It sounds like we need to have a conversation. I'm not sure I'm quite getting what you're aiming for.
Yeah, we'll talk later. But think about having tests that can be deployed by themselves without rebuilding the environment. So if you need, for example, a specific database configuration, the test will loads it and runs without destroying the environment whenever possible.
Right, so you can do that now. We have the deployment test, which gets everything up and running, we deploy, we get Openstack and state the test, and then we fire off this DevStack test, and then we fire off this Tempest test.
Yes.
And then we fire off whatever test we come up with, whether it's database or something.
Yep.
And then we can reconfigure the deployment, and then one Juju can into add relation to Postgres.
Yep.
That all connected to the migrations will run either in Charm or later if I separate it out manually by a test. And we can fire off those same tests against that environment.
Yep.
That's
That's
what you
it.
need.
Yeah.
But the tests, there's nothing that can't get in the charms and any of that magic. It's all how Jenkins is interacting with Juju.
One thing that I'm worried about is our extreme dependence on Jenkins. Our tests nowadays are intermixed with Jenkins.
Okay, so everything we do is driven by Jenkins.
Yes, I know, but now I'm an end user. I'm pure community. I have those 5 boxes by my side that my sons are not using, or I stole from somebody else. This is open after all. And I want to run them. I want to run something on them. I don't have Jenkins.
So
I should not depend on having
you
Jenkins.
do, I mean, everything that Jenkins touches is either Juju, the charms that Juju uses, or a number of scripts that we have posted in a separate repository. And the Juju deployment script does this automated.
Yeah,
At the
so-
end of it, it says, here's the commands Juju ran. So you can, if you have those machines next to you and that all moves script, you can just copy and paste and it'll deploy the same thing.
Or I could have those scripts available, and I could just download them and run them.
Yeah.
They generally are, if they're not good together, you just run one and you have the same exact setup list.
Yeah.
But by and large, like bootstrapping the environment is just a matter of copying and pasting 9 lines or something and assuming you have hardware to satisfy that.
Give me those 9 lines.
Oh yeah, they're in the deployment.
Yeah, you see.
Console output of Jenkins job, the very last day, it gives you exactly what you ran
Yeah.
in the configuration.
Okay, the last thing I did on Jenkins was a test that was initially fully under Jenkins. I changed it so that now it's a standalone script and Jenkins calls it.
That's sort of a best practice for using Jenkins.
Yes, but it's not our.
Okay, so if that's happening, that's a problem generally with Ubuntu QA that we need to stamp on now, because it will just get in the way of anybody not using Jenkins, we can use something to do, and that's what you're aiming.
Okay,
You
let's
want to be able,
stop.
so whatever we do with Jenkins, you want to be able to do without Jenkins?
I want to be able to run them on the
Yeah,
Jenkins
exactly.
because we run them on the Jenkins, but I want to be able to allow non-Jenkins users to run them without requiring them to run bloody Jenkins.
Yeah.
So I'll clean up the Jenkins shop so it's not git cloning, setting up this OpenRC and firing up this script. It'll just be calling one script to do all that. Is that help? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think the useful one maybe is some docs around how to use the project generally. And we probably need to do the work to kind of follow that way. We need to sort out the deployment stuff. I know that we've got it in a branch, but we need to follow it.
Yeah,
I'll have to use it.
What's that?
I know I'm thinking.
So he mentioned turning it into its own thing and packaging it or keeping it in a project somewhere.
Right, yeah. Now we understand what you're talking about. But I think that's an overall, apart from how we source the start of the process for building the package and how we trigger the package, I think it's not much. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, like it was ISO test.
Mhm.
When ISO test, we had
Yep.
it's a whole
So another thing we're not testing is APIs. EC2 API, OpenStack API.
Yes.
What's a good test suite that we can use to do that?
Whatever.
Is there anything you guys know of? Like a EC2 API testing?
OpenStack API.
So there is a project to build the common compatibility test with ClassStack.
but
It's not done yet.
It's with Martin, he's been involved.
And this will have you running a command with all possible option
Yeah, the idea is to assess the relative compatibility with Amazon's APIs for the alternate cloud providers. So everyone claims to be compatible, but it's not fully compatible 100%. So we need to have hard numbers and the group at the Openstack Academy decided to build that, and the ClassStack guys decided to join the protocol.
What was the name of it?
No, they need that.
It's just a general agreement that this was a good thing to have.
Yeah, everyone wants it.
Martin was committed to that.
Might take some time because of it would probably not be an OpenStack project for whatever reasons. But that these folks were here before we could ask them if they would participate in the same thing. And it's the idea is to build something that allows them to tell they are better at solving the issue than we are. Should be interested.
So what about the OpenStack API? Is there, you know, the tools that will,
What was it? I couldn't hear you.
is there any tools to test the OpenStack API? Besides things? Fish? Do you know any tools that will test the OpenStack API for like valid, like, just general testing?
External tools?
No? No.
No, I mean, there's all the internal unit tests for the API, which are pretty expensive, and there's things like Torpedo, which tests using the fog bindings, and then there's Openstack, which tests. But those aren't really API compatibility tests; they're more just like functionality tests.
Okay. I can't think of anything else.
Just want to make sure we got the actions down from what we discussed.
Sure.
So you've got document tested and reference deployment configs, yeah. Employee release code, yeah. Database migrations, deployment charges and tests, yeah. Cleanup duty deployments.
According to Garrett, according to Garrett.
Yeah.
With some kind of categorization so that we know where it failed.
On that, there is, you asked for a link. We just got contacted by the IS, and that we're running out of space, and we decided to start being more selective on how many back runs we maintain. The run will be there, but some of the logs might not.
Yeah, so we here stripped quite a lot out of Openstack because it was quite a big workspace set of artifacts. And then keep last 50 runs anyway.
Okay.
So I don't think
Yeah,
it's
the
necessary.
point is so that he knows that if you go back 1 year, you may not find the logs.
That would be true for the event action. So basically, my expectation is that the link should be there for, however long it takes to review. After that, I don't think it should be a first order instance.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you are aware of that.
While we're here, is the process we used last cycle for packaging, managing the package branches in a proposed branch and a testing branch and the main Ubuntu branch, or the server dev branch, work well for supporting many releases?
I think so.
Yeah, we need to document that. Because I can't remember how it
Yeah, so the way we've been doing packaging is we have it's really hard to even summarize, but we have a proposed packaging branch that we commit changes to manually that get merged with the main packaging branch to build the package. So we can test new patches we apply or packaging changes in this proposed thing where we don't need peer review or anything to get stuff in there. And that will pass or fail in the build, produce a working package. And after that smoke test, we move those changes into the main packaging branch that the Ubuntu packaging is based off.
So if you guys want to do PA packages, just execute that branch.
So the idea is that there's the main Ubuntu branch, and then there's a packaging branch that manages that package out of the Ubuntu branches. And it should be safe to assume that whatever goes into there has been through this process of build testing and integration testing and produces something that's stable and working. And that's what eventually gets uploaded to Ubuntu Weekly or however we do it.
Yep.
So we could use that as the base for the Openstack PPA.
Yeah, it's just, I mean,
Because it's slightly more dynamic than the package design.
yeah, it gets updated and we'll have a
should
cron-
work pretty much against Trump all the time. That's why we land the initial fix. If something that's changed upstream, we have to do it.
I still can't figure out if you were interested in having a PPA or not, but if you are, I make sure that weekly or bi-weekly or something, we sync those changes up to you guys if you're interested in
Well,
them.
the PPA would cover things that are not covered in your test metrics. So Folsom on precise. Oh, it is covered.
Possible and precise. So what we cover at the moment is Essex on precise, possible, precise, possible.
But you wouldn't have, you would So it's more daily builds, I guess. Daily builds of awesome, well, daily per commit builds of awesome unprecise. Yes.
In quantum.
And well, there might be some overlap right now, but as soon as you get to Quetzal, we would have G on Quetzal, which is something daily builds of G. Yeah, Quetzal.
Yeah, so we're going to have latest trunk on current dev release, trunk on 12.04 will be what we do through the dev cycle. Yeah, and then we'll have stable.
You will have some delay, right? It will not be per commit.
We haven't really talked about whether the trunk on 12.04 is per commit. We should probably talk about that now.
As opposed to what, just doing a...
I haven't set it up yet, so physically, you know. So ultimately we could drive the false and precise testing exactly the same way as we do false and quantum. So it's per commit. And the tests will just queue up behind each other. So the package build process and the pyramid, and then the test cycle will just back up.
So I think there's still value for a let us commit build because you will always have the small delays. But how often we want to refresh the packages for some unprecise?
For the ones
in the cloud archive.
Cloud archive, they're running out.
If the PPA or
Because based on the answer, it might make sense to use the PPA as a potentially as a playground you can build from if we use the same package. There is no reason to. I mean, the only interest of the PPA is to get the latest commit directly in the hands of the tester without waiting for extra collections of patches or upgrade testing, whatever you guys will add to the.
So as soon as we've done a successful package build locally, we push to PPA. It's pre-test, pre-deployment pre-test. Does that help?
Yeah, so I think we should converge.
Yeah.
Could be just about abandoning our PPA and make yours more obvious, or just push to both, or push to ours. But I don't see value in duplicating work here. Because when we use the same packaging, the idea is just to provide a track on the current two bodies, stable current state, yes, and then on the current on the latest not +1 but not LTS. Okay, for developers.
It sounds like we can figure that out. Not duplicate that.
If you will be pushing anywhere.
Okay. So I think we should keep a list of all the tests we want to do as well, like in VCR too.
do what?
Keep a list of all the tests we need to write. Yeah, like a regular text file or something like that.
Okay.
Just put it in a version control. So people, if they're interested enough, they can keep track of what's happening. And publish the results somewhere as well. Not necessarily checkings, but like I don't know. Like this is what we tested recently.
So what we're currently testing?
Yeah.
Why don't we just go to Jenkins?
I don't know. Maybe like a blog post or something. I don't know.
If you like.
Yeah.
Right. You have the action on that. giving you bright ideas.
Carl's gonna help us out.
Excuse me?
You gonna help us out?
I'll give you all my thought process.
No, we're in the process.
I'll probably have to get something done there. So
Yes.
we'll talk later. I'm not going to commit to having my need there.
Oh, I know something we
You're gonna do all right all those
to
tests?
do Juju testing against OpenStack and potentially Awesome testing, or maybe Juju against Awesome against Trunk.
And the whole point here is eventually you'll pass those tests to us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have to work together.
Yeah.
Not this way. Not punting them here.
So here. Okay. That's David's other testing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I was doing manually once in a while just to make sure it still worked, and it turns out at some point it broke, and I had no idea how long it had been broken for. So it would be nice to do that at least weekly. I started doing a test where, in a true, it does a whole Juju environment. And
It sounds like there's a whole bunch of testing we should be doing on a weekly basis, like burn testing, Juju testing, also testing, maybe more kind of day. And trying to limit the number of moving parts that we try and test on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'll just never know what's broken.
yeah,
But I don't have any objection to doing weekly regular testing on the other side. That makes that makes a lot of sense. And maybe we only do that against a subset of our test deployment. So that's contour on and false rather than precise. What I need to do that testing. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to raise?
Anything else? Anyone in the room want to raise anything? We're still not awake. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.